Hello, hello. It is Charisse, and I am live with Tiff Babington. Hello, Tiff.
Hi,
Um,
sir.
Hi, just a quick introduction on Tiff. She is a Lighting the World soul realignment and quantum success coach, an Akashic Records guide, an energy healer, a mindfulness facilitator, and an international best-selling co-author, transforming lives through energy mastery, healing, and soul of realignment. Welcome. I'm so
Thank
glad you're
you.
here.
Yeah, lovely to be here. I know you've got a star-studded lineup of speakers, which I've been watching a few of the replays. So yeah, looking
Absolutely.
forward to having a chat with you today.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it as well. So tell me a little bit maybe about your get started story. Like, how did you fall into this world
Mm.
that is such an
Well,
interest?
it happened during COVID. It was about 4 years ago now, and I got really sick with chikungunya, which is a mosquito-borne disease, a little bit like dengue or malaria. And I literally sort of couldn't stand up for about 2 weeks. And while I was on what felt like my deathbed at the time, I ended up on an online summit, a little bit like this, and that a woman from Canada was running. And on that, uh, the speakers on that list of speakers, there was a lady called Marina Beach, who was an Akashic record guide. And I was listening to her and thought, wow, that sounds really interesting. I want to get hold of her. And so I did. And I got her to read my records. And it was absolutely life-changing for me. So much so that I thought, wow, that's so cool. I want to learn how to do that. And so I can help other people transform their lives like it had transformed mine. And so I did. I studied for quite a while under a lady called Andrea Hess, who does a modality called soul realignment. And since then, I've done, I don't know, it must be a few hundred Akashic record readings by now. And people really do find them life changing. And I think the thing that people really like about them is that it kind of tells you about who you are at soul level, so what your divine soul blueprint looks like. It tells you kind of how connected to yourself you are at soul level. And then it also talks about karmic blocks and restrictions that might be holding you back from living your best life, and how you might shift your actions, thoughts, beliefs over to knowing who you are at soul level, over to being more soul aligned. And so it really does, I think, really consciously shift people once they're kind of aware of who they are at soul level. So that was kind of one thing I did that started me off on my journey. And when I did that, I was kind of, I decided that I didn't really want to continue to do what I was doing the way that I was doing it, because at that point in time, I was High Commissioner for New Zealand and Tonga. And so I had been a diplomat for 29 years. And I just realized that this wasn't really the path for me anymore, and that I needed to change the way that I was living my life. So that was kind of a bit of a self-realization piece as part of the spiritual awakening as well. And so I sort of took conscious steps then to semi-retire, and start doing things that I was more passionate about. So other than kind of Akashic records, then I also decided to learn to do energy healing, like hands-on energy healing. And so, yeah, I've been on a bit of a journey around that, which started with Reiki and has ended up with a group of healers here in New Zealand where I live. And we co-host retreats in New Zealand, and we're about to do our first one in Australia. It also led me on a bit of a journey around thinking about retreats more generally. And I had thought when I was in Tonga that I was going to run a retreat. Like, I had drawn up plans and I was looking for land, and then I went and lived at a retreat for 6 months, and I decided, oh my gosh, I just got my peace back after sort of retiring. and I was living in this beautiful place. I had whales kind of bouncing around in the background. I was living in this lovely spot on the edge of a cliff. But I looked at the retreat owners and I saw how hard they worked, and I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know that I want to do that. That looks like really hard work, and I've just come out of like a really hard job. So I'm like, oh yeah, maybe not. Maybe I'll go back to New Zealand and kind of think about how that might roll. So as it's happened, I've ended up going into retreat hosting, but from quite a different angle that I thought that I was going to go into it from. And I think some of that again was around self-realization, that I kept kind of hitting brick walls around the land and getting the plans and permissions organized, and then I'm kind of like, okay, I think the universe is actually trying to tell me something, that this is maybe not my path, that's not as soul aligned as I thought it was going to be. However, I've done it, but the cards have fallen differently. And now I also co-host retreats back in Tonga, where I was living, swimming with whales. So I do that once a year, which I love. I love doing that. So I'm about to take a group of New Zealanders up in September, and Australians actually, to go and swim with the whales. Yeah. That's another strand. And then because I love learning, I decided to also do a quantum success coaching course. I'd already had a life coach diploma in my previous life as a diplomat, just because I used to do a lot of mentoring of staff. But then I decided, if I'm going to take a more spiritual approach to the way I'm doing things, I need to think about, okay, well, what does that mean? How do I help people understand that kind of energy and connection with spirit, connection with self is really important, not just from a mental perspective, but actually from an energetic perspective. And so that led me down the path of quantum success coaching through Christy Whitman in the States. And I really learned a lot about myself as part of doing that course too. So I've got that side of things. And then what else is kind of going on? And then I'm also learning to do Qigong, because I'm finding that as part of the energy healing, but also the coaching, being able to kind of manage my own energy in a way, and manage my energy field, is really helping me to help other people not only clear their fields from an Akashic Records perspective, but also physically manage it in their own way. So it's just kind of another tool in the toolbox, I suppose, in terms of helping people master their energy, because my title that I've given myself is sort of energy realignment coach. Yeah,
absolutely, love it.
Yeah,
love it.
So it's been a bit of a journey.
Isn't it always though? I feel like anytime we're going into the spiritual world, we always it seems to take us getting to like rock bottom before we start to look at how the energy could be playing into it, or how we can like listen to spirit more, or how we can listen to whatever you call it, God or the universe or Mama Earth or spirit or whatever it is. We just kind of like take a hot minute sometimes before we actually listen. Some of us need a 2x4. Hi, I was a 2x4 lady. And some of us just need a couple of gentle nudges before we get there. But yeah.
I tend to be, I hit the rock bottom and then I have to pick myself up. So yeah, I've had a few hard life lessons, and of my own doing, because at the end of the day, we're responsible for ourselves and responsible for our own energy, and we create our own realities. So, for me now, knowing what I know, I feel like I actually have a whole lot of understanding about how energy works, which I didn't understand before. So as part of the work that I do, I kind of work with 7 essential laws, which is from the quantum success coaching course that I've done. And the 7 essential laws are basically how energy works in the universe. And I mean, there's plenty of universal laws that people have, and from different traditions. But the ones that I kind of work with are the first one is the law of attraction, of course. So, everything you put out into the universe comes back at you, because we are energy receivers, we are energy containers, we are energy transmitters, and but we're also energy transmuters. So it's kind of like, for me, the law of attraction is really about like vibration matches like vibration. So again, if we're putting energy out into the universe, which we're not being deliberate about, then we can confuse the universal source, or that creative, that life force energy, because we're not clear in our own minds what we actually want. And so sometimes we put out what we don't want as well as what we do want, and it's kind of like, well, then you're splitting your energy. So the next law for me is around deliberate creation. It's about putting intention into what we want to manifest. So and when we can do that, then I think that we can get a much better result from what we want. But I think the idea with the sort of deliberate creation is not to get too fixated on an outcome necessarily, because then we get too attached to it, and then we don't necessarily just allow the universe to kind of deliver in a way that is for our best good. So I think, the other one is that once we've kind of put the intention out there, is just to kind of allow it to flow, and also to detach a little bit from the outcome in some ways, so that we're not, as I say, sort of fixated on it has to be like this at this time in this place,
right?
And then we shut off all of these options that are available to us.
Yeah,
because that's
absolutely.
about your potentiality, and we do live in an abundant universe. It's an energetic universe, and if we can tap into what that energetic field looks like, the quantum field looks like for us, then we will be much more successful in the way that we go about our lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I totally feel that so deeply. So tell me a little bit more about the whole idea of quantum success for you. So what is quantum success?
So quantum success for me is really about understanding the workings of the energy of the universal energy, and understanding that everything is vibration, everything is energy, whether that's sound or radio waves, or for us, we have an energy field around us, and our Akashic Records are part of our energy field. So some people sort of think of them as kind of like a library or a database. I try to think of them as something that it's part of us. It's in our DNA. It's part of our energetic makeup. And so for me to be successful in a quantum way is to understand how we can master our energy in a way that we can tap into that pure potentiality, that universal abundance, that there is sufficiency out there for everyone. And if we can come from heart, particularly, in our gut, rather than our head, which sometimes gets us caught up in too many thoughts, then we come from a place of compassion. We come from a place of self-love, non-judgment for others, and in that way we keep our vibration at a higher level in terms of then when we're connecting out into the universe and to being successful. I think of when we work in lower vibrations, then we can get really stuck, and we can again attract the energy that we're putting out.
Totally right.
So for me, it's about trying to be quantumly successful, is to try and lift people's vibration and understand that we can tap into all of this pure potentiality, this abundance around us, in a way that connects us all as part of like a big organism. So again, that law of unity is really important too. So I think in terms of quantum success, it's about really understanding your energy and where you're at, and using your emotions particularly as your GPS of life, because they really do tell you when you're on and off track from a soul perspective. And when you're feeling icky sticky, then do something that feels better. I think you've got Debjit Kundu on here. One of his favorite ones is play the resonance game. And I love the resonance game, which
Absolutely.
is basically about just doing what feels good. And if it doesn't feel good, then you're off path. And so it's really feeling and being aware of those emotions and moving through them in a way that doesn't get you stuck. Or sticks that energy in your body, which can then make you sick as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not good for us, right? Like it gets us sick, it gets us tired, it gets us stuck, it gets us broke, it gets us sad, it gets us crappy relationships. It's
exactly. Yeah. You know, and then we get all guilty, we get fearful, we get anxious, you know, and I think, you know, in this sort of day and age where there's so much stimulation that kind of can happen, I think in some ways we get overstimulated, and then we lose center. Yeah. So the more that we can kind of come back into ourselves, come back to heart, come back to gut. Look, my key tool for people is meditate, whatever that kind of looks like for you. But come back to self, come back inside yourself, because you have all the answers. We always have all the answers, but you know, we're constantly looking outside of ourselves for external validation or someone to help us and support us. And you know, I think that's when you are going through the journey, I think that's an important part of the process. But at the end of the day, what I want to do is empower people to transform their lives and have the tools and understanding that they can then coach themselves. And I want to do myself out of a job.
Absolutely. I think I'm right there with you. Like, I want to do myself out of a job when it comes to this stuff. Like, let's just teach the little tiny kids how to do this for themselves so that they can just be the best them that's possible. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm blessed to live with my 3-year-old granddaughter, and it's just lovely watching her and being able to kind of coach her in a way that I didn't have the tools in my toolbox when I had my 3 children. And so I see her, and she's got a very supportive mother and father in this regard too. So I see her blossom under that, you know, a different way of doing things. Yeah.
One of my best friends, her son is now 8. And so she and I've been kind of doing this journey together for the last 9-ish years. So this is all he's ever known, is playing in this energies and, you know, is this yours even, or is it somebody else's? Yes. And, you know, identifying all of the emotions and the energies and all that stuff. And he's a completely different kid from any of the kids that either of us raised before. Like, we both had kids, and they're not this at all. So it's been really fun. And we're raising that new generation, just like your granddaughter, right? Like raising that new generation to be different, to be more like indigo kids, right? Like,
absolutely.
So juicy. Yeah.
One of her favorite books is about EFT tapping. So we sit down and there's and do tapping together. And but I absolutely agree with you. I think, you know, we're taught from an early age is, you know, not to feel our emotions and to squash them down and you know, and don't cry, and, you know, don't express yourself, and, you know, whatever those, you know, those beliefs and programs that we've been running since childhood. And you know, I think as a result we've got a generation which we've got huge mental health issues in New Zealand. I don't know what it's like in the States, but because we've become disconnected from ourselves, we've become disconnected from our emotions. And I think the more that we can kind of get back into our bodies and back into feeling, the better we're going to be as a society.
Absolutely. I agree completely. I think it's been an interesting journey the last, I would say 2019, things really started to shift for a lot of people. And at that point, then it really started to ramp up. And then we saw with COVID, where I'm not to get too esoteric, but a whole bunch of souls left the planet on purpose. And a whole bunch of the ones that were left kind of had their epiphanies and went, holy wow, what's going on here? Where am I? Is this the same world? Well, no, spoiler alert, right? As you know, because you've been playing in the Akashic Records. So tell me a little bit about what you're finding from people's Akashic Records with relation to that, because that's been a big transition for people.
Yeah, well, I think it's, the Akashic Records are really about our soul's journey across time, space, and dimension.
Yeah.
So, and again, because it's energy, we trap energy because of the choices that we've made, either in this life or past lives, in our energy fields. And we can trap it in ways. We were talking a little bit about health. So that's one way that, we can affect our well-being. But we can also trap it in a way that affects our DNA. So we can get DNA from our parents' genetic karma, for example, that comes down through the Akashic Records. But we can also trap energy because of the choices that we have made. And so it doesn't mean that it's kind of right or wrong. It's just is what it is. And the energy kind of doesn't move through us in a way that helps us live our best lives, again, in terms of quantum success. So I think in terms of looking at the Akashic Records, for me, it's about helping people kind of not only understand that they are who they are at soul level, because I think that's really important, to be able to know how your soul likes to roll. But it's also around, I think, supporting people to realize that there are the choices that we make do have consequences for us, not just for us, but for others too. So because we're a collective. And so when I'm doing clearing in the Akashic Records, some of the stuff that I'm kind of finding is a lot to do around self-love, people's self-worth.
Yep.
And trying to get them back into to loving themselves again, and holistically, and releasing those lower vibrational energies that we've talked about, the guilt, the shame, the blame, the sometimes anger, sometimes trauma, again, that we've created in this life and past lives. But I think one of the things that also sort of strikes me too is that we need to realize that, especially those of us that are older souls, is that we have been all things at all times. We've been everything from rocks to great people to maybe not so great people. We've killed people, we've loved people, we've hurt people, we've inspired people, we've done everything. And not just on this planet Earth, is where most of us are starseed, so we come from other galaxies, and in the universe, and not necessarily even in this universe. Because we're multidimensional beings, we move between dimensions. So I think self-compassion for both ourselves and others is really important in this day and age, because we can't be not judgmental, because we've all done that, we've all been there, we've done it. And so what's Absolutely. The point in judging others about it? All we can do is change ourselves, and as part of changing ourselves, change that collective patterning that has come up through the generations.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm curious, and I'm sure some of your audience are as well, about the oddest Akashic record reading that you ever did. Because everybody wants to hear about the odd ones, right? And they always stick in our brains too. I do some past life stuff, so I totally I have some weird stories, but you, I'm sure, have some stories as well.
Oddest. I've done some odd stuff on myself, I have to say. There's been some quite wacky stuff that has kind of come up around past lives that I've had. the other thing that sometimes I do find is sometimes I can't read people's fields because they've put up blocks of for some reason, and so until they are willing to acknowledge those blocks and let them go, then it's sometimes very hard to get into their records. And then the other thing I've found too is that some people have souls flitting in and out of their bodies, so it's kind of like, which soul do you read? It's like
Yeah, walk-ins, right? I mean, walk-ins are a
exactly.
big thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
And
So
some
those
people
are kind of the odd things I think that have come up.
yeah.
But yeah, I
So
mean, yeah.
let's dive into walk-ins for a hot minute, because I think
Mm,
that's something that not a lot of people really talk about enough.
mm,
In my opinion, walk-ins aren't always a bad thing.
no.
Especially if they're flitting in and out and there's multiples in there. Sometimes that's the soul that we need in that moment to deal with the situation.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people who do Akashic Records readings or intuitive work or energy healing, they're like, no, you can only have one soul in one body and you need to pick and blah blah blah. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What's your thought on that?
Well, I think it can be useful. I've had 2 people over the past year where they've clearly made soul contracts before they've come into this life around how this is going to work and the walk-ins that it's going to happen. So I've had one lady who was a twin in a previous life, and the twin got cancer and died. So basically, and one twin, and she was the twin that survived. So they made a compact in that life that they would swap out in this life. So that happened, but she was totally discombobulated for a long time around why she was feeling so ungrounded and just couldn't, and because it happened in her 50s, so it lasted quite a while. That she was sort of one soul, and then she was this new soul. But once she kind of understood and remembered that past life, she's like, oh, it makes total sense. Now I understand.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's kind of cool how that works sometimes, right? Like
yeah,
we
exactly.
do make these agreements and then yeah, it can be very interesting when you're first on the path and you're maybe like trying to help people and stuff and you're like, what in the name of what is this? And then you realize that it's actually for a reason and they're actually like, sometimes if you mess it up more, it makes it worse, right?
Exactly.
You kind
Yeah.
of have to know what you're up to before you start fooling around with too much with walk-ins and shared bodies and things like that. It's like, okay, maybe there's a reason. Let me check into that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what would you say has been kind of the most heartwarming of the experiences that you've gone through or that you've guided others to go through?
I get a lot of joy by seeing people kind of the light bulbs go on, and people are like, oh my gosh, now I so get myself, and I understand the choices that I've made and why I've made them in this life. But I also understand all of these gifts that I have as well. So, one of the part of the Akashic record reading is not only to get people to focus on the sort of what people might deem as the negative stuff, but it's also about remembering your soul gifts, remembering that we are divine creatures, that we are the image of God, we are the image of the universe, that we are here to experience our divinity on earth. And we've chosen to come onto earth at this point in time to express our divinity and clear some of those karmic patterns that we've created in either this life or the past lives. But if you don't know that, then it's really hard to either focus on the gifts or clear the patterns.
It's funny how that works, hey?
Exactly.
Absolutely. Have you had a lot of your clients kind of like completely shift their lives after doing sessions?
Yeah,
Can you talk about that a
absolutely.
little bit?
Yeah, so I've got one young girl who I've done I've got a whole family that I've done.
Awesome.
So I think I've probably done at least half a dozen, if not closer to 10 of the family members. And so I think in terms of their interpersonal family dynamics, that's really changed the way they work with each other. And they were all quite intuitive, spiritual people anyway. So this is kind of just like, woof, gone to the next level for them, because now they can understand each other at soul level. So that's been really heartwarming to see the change in that family dynamic. And then I've got a young girl too who I've done her and her husband, and I can see great things that are going to happen for her, and also her husband as well, but more for her. And she's quite a dynamic personality anyway, but was kind of kept getting, again, she kept sort of hitting brick walls on things that she was trying to be dynamic around. But now that she understands who she is at soul level, she can take a path that's much more aligned to actually how her soul likes to roll. And for me, that's just, yeah, it is absolutely heartwarming to see those changes, especially young people. You know, I wish I'd had these tools when I was a bit younger, and life would have been so much easier. But you know, obviously that was not my journey, and you know, I'm doing it now. But yeah, I think that I do get a lot of joy, especially from helping the younger people understand themselves, because I think, you know, they've got longer lives left on the planet, and therefore they can affect more people, affect change in others too, because of what they've learned about themselves.
I love it. I love it. And so tell me a little bit about, you know, kind of what your process is, because we've talked about kind of the overarching stuff, but tell me what that process looks like for you.
So for the Akashic record readings, they normally take about 3 hours from woe to go for me. So it's about an hour and a half of prep, where I go with people's permission into their records, and I basically all I need is their names, date of birth, place of birth, and that's their permission for me to access their records. And because I would not go into people's records without them, you know, their permission to do that. And I think, you know, again, this is for me about just permission space and safety space as well. I mean, I know, you know, I can go into people's fields, as I'm sure that a lot of people can, and read the energy, but I purposely try not to do that, because I think it's, again, they have to be ready for it, and it's not for me to offer advice unless they've asked for it. So always ask their permission, and then I do a reading. So I've got a protocol that I follow. I use a pendulum to do yes, no answers in a lot of it. But I'm finding the more that I do the records, the more I'm getting it intuitively, and I'm just using the pendulum just to confirm that I haven't quite got things, you know, I've got things on the right track. And then I arrange a Zoom session with the feedback, and that normally takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on how many questions people have. And I kind of blend those sessions, not just with giving a reading, but also because of the quantum success coaching course that I've done, trying to give people tools to then become more soul aligned thereafter. So, you know, because I want people to, as I said before, not have to keep coming back to me for support. I want to give them the tools to be empowered to be more soul aligned. So yeah, I tend to do a bit of a blending. And then I'm always open to questions afterwards. But I find that people need probably at least kind of 6 months to just kind of integrate and process all of that stuff. And then sometimes I start seeing people kind of returning thereafter if they've got kind of another situation in life, a life situation that's sort of not going well for them, and they need a bit more guidance around, okay, am I on the right path or not on the right path? But yeah, I try to sort of give people enough to sort of keep going in the interim. And then if they need to come back to me, then I'm very happy to help them out. And I do have kind of, you know, packages where I can sort of support people on a longer term basis if they really feel like they're struggling.
Absolutely. Love it. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
So what have I missed? What else should we be talking about?
What else was I going to say? So yeah, I had talked a little bit about about meditation. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of reiterate, I suppose, that for me, that's a really key tool around getting centered and back into self. And it can be anything from just, sitting in peace and quiet. It can be being out in nature. It can be literally brushing your teeth. You can get into a meditative state with brushing your teeth. So I think sometimes people get really hung up on what meditation kind of could mean, and that it can be hard. Yeah, you don't have to sit cross-legged on the floor. There's all sorts of ways to meditate. I mean, Qigong, which I'm doing, is a moving meditation. Dance is a meditation, playing music. I think for me, it's again about just feeling into your energy and being aware of your energy field and the way that you're kind of moving through your day. So yeah, I think for me, that's like number one tool. And I try to do some sort of meditation every day. And I always say to people that is really important, because, it's about always being connected. So ABC, always be connected. Absolutely. And trust, which is around, to rely upon spirit totally. So it's about, again, just trying to be in flow, trying to be, as Debjit sort of rightly puts, it's the resonance piece. It's like, how can I move and change my state in a way that keeps me in flow through the day, even though challenges will come, of course they will. And, yeah, because otherwise how do we learn? If life was all bloody fluffy bunnies and unicorns, then life would be pretty boring. So, we've got to have a few challenges in life. Otherwise, how do we learn? So, but I think if we can be grateful and find within those challenges the lessons, then we can see them as blessings and be grateful for those too. So yeah, I always try and practice gratitude as well. So that's a really important practice, I think, for people to kind of think about.
Absolutely. Cool.
Yeah.
I am going to drop the link for people to find you.
And, so absolutely. So yeah, if people want to get hold of me, I'm very happy to have a chat. I do an initial discovery call, 30 minutes, if people want to just have a chat and see what sort of what they'd like to do. But yeah, I think the staple of kind of what I do tends to be, as I say, the Akashic record readings, and that's normally enough for people. And I can either work in person in New Zealand for those that are in New Zealand, or most of the stuff I really do is online. Yeah, but very happy for people to get hold of me.
Absolutely. Love it. Awesome. Yeah. Any final things that you want to share here, or?
I just to really say to listeners is that everything is energy, and to just really focus on the fact that you are energetic beings here in this life to be as divine as you possibly can. And so the more that we can clear our energy fields and be aligned with our divinity, the better life is going to roll for you.
Absolutely. Awesome. Okay. On that note, I'm going to end it here. Thank you, Tiffany. I appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate your time. Thanks, Cherise.